Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at, as you can see here, Virtua Fighter 4 on the Sega Naomi 2 hardware. Now this is the Virtua Fighter 4 version C Gd-Rom game. It can be used on both American and Japanese BIOS, and I can honestly tell you, upon doing this myself, I've noticed absolutely no difference whatsoever. And of course, I have the same old setup that I usually have for my Naomi games. I have, like, down here, I have the JVS to JAMA I/O board. And of course, for the sake of capture, I have the upscaler, which upscales this to 720p, and all connected to the Elgato. And that's how you're going to see some beautifully captured footage. And for the first time on my channel, see how great Virtua Fighter 4 truly looks as compared to my out of the camera footage of Final Tuned. There's a few differences here and there, which I'm sure I will be pointing out during the footage. And then we're just going to get out of the test mode here. And of course, when this comes up, you're going to see the little 720p thing in the side of the screen, because this is going through the Elgato, through the video converter. And we'll get right into this and take a look at the original version, well, a revision of the original version of Virtua Fighter 4. And as you had seen in some of my earlier videos, it displayed that thing about you can skip it by pressing start, and that's because there's no network or anything. And since I'm using Japanese BIOS, that's why it says Japan. And here's your intro, so take a look at this and enjoy this. This is different than the one on the PlayStation 2. And you can see here that the selection of characters from Virtua Fighter 4 are all selectable, except for, of course, the two that were added in Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution, which were Brad Burns and that Go guy, I think that's his name. And one thing I definitely have to say about this game, as compared to the PlayStation 2 version, is everything just looks great. I know I've said this like about 1 million times with different versions of Virtua Fighter 4 that I've commented on, but you're probably going to get it a little bit better on this video than you did in the previous Virtua Fighter 4 Final Tune video. But this game just looks so sharp and so smooth, and just like a lot of the graphical nuances here had to be taken away when they made the PlayStation 2 version. So like stuff as small as like how the snow moves and everything had to just be taken back a little bit. And just even the detail in the outfits. And now one difference I'll point out already compared to the later versions of this game is that One thing you will notice is when the characters lose life, the actual area where your life wasn't is red in this. In the later versions, what would happen is that it would turn red for like a second, and then it'd go away to reveal black, and then like the black is basically the area where there's no life. But here it just stays red. It kind of like blinks for a second, and then it kind of draws back like that. And another small difference here is that the little beads that you get when you defeat your enemy are red in this version, whereas the other versions they're actually yellow. It's just a little thing that I had noticed.
Ready?
And one thing I thought was kind of funny in this is that there's a lot of times it'll be between matches where if you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, it'll say version C, because I guess they really want you to understand that this is the updated version, which, from what I could gather, the original version is considered version A, and then of course there is version B, which is the same GDS version, GDS 0012B, and then of course this version is GDS 0012C, which has the most bug fixes and everything in it. So basically, this was the final version of Virtua Fighter 4. And the game originally came out in August of 2001. And the first time it was seen was the Arcade Operators Union in Japan of February 2001. This, of course, is the first Virtua Fighter game to not run on the graphics chips by Lockheed Martin, which was the Sega Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3. And apparently at the time when this came out, it being a whole like 4 years between entries in the series was like quite a bit, because if you look at like Virtua Fighter, the original, came out in '93, followed by 2, which was actually just a year later in 1994, and then you got Virtua Fighter 3 in 1996, which was only 2 years later. Of course, they released the version Team Battle a year later, 1997. And then you had to wait a whole 4 years for Virtua Fighter 4 in 2001. And my thoughts would be is the reason why you had such a delay in time is that the development of new hardware, and of course, I forget what magazine it was at the time, but they showed the characters, and as opposed to the earlier versions where they might have looked a little bit more cartoony, the characters have this more realistic look. I know especially like Akira Ryuki himself, he just has that like more, this is like a real person look to his face instead of this is some fictitious character who you could only see like in a video game. And if you had seen during that like next match pause there, that had the version C on the bottom left corner. And if you look after this match, you'll notice. And of course, one thing I will mention already that's different in this version of the game as opposed to the other is in Final Tuned and Evolution, you'll have 10 rounds, 10 stages, and then final stage, and then of course bonus stage, which is Doral, which sadly in the whole time of playing Virtua Fighter 4, I've only beaten Doral once, which honestly is a little bit sad, but you know, she's kind of like an extreme character that has a lot of different characters' moves. I'd almost go as far as to say she is similar to Raido, where in Dead or Alive, Dead or Alive, Raido is a character who kind of has a composition of different moves, but from what I can see with Doral, she can do like just about any character's moves, because if you look at the top of the screen when you're facing her, she has the Shun-Di drinking thing, so she can do Shun-Di's moves or anyone's moves, so she might even be like similar to like Shinnok or Unknown, where she would basically do any character's moves. And now one thing I have to say about Jeffrey is, like, I remember in the earlier games he was still a big character, but I think ever since, like, maybe this game or the one before, Jeffrey got that, like, really ginormous look to him.
Ready, fight one. Ready,
and this is another stage that looks really good, that it has the water that actually sways, and you see the boats moving up and down, which is a really nice effect. And one of the things I know a lot of people were disappointed with some of the stages is how they're kind of caged in, but I honestly think it leads to some really nice matches. And I remember a similar complaint when some people played Soul Calibur 3, because you had like these more caged in rings. But sometimes you can get a definite better experience in that respect. And that's one thing that really annoyed me in that one part there. If you saw, she kept on like grabbing my hand, so I kind of had to switch up the style I was like fighting her with. Because it was like one of those things, like almost as bad as when you're playing against like a really bad player of a game, and they basically just spam one combo over and over again. Because I could remember one time I was playing, I think it was Dead or Alive Ultimate, which, no, not Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate, but Dead or Alive Ultimate, which was the version of Dead or Alive 2 for Xbox, and there's this one kid, he kept on doing the same move over and over again, a Kasumi, and he beat a couple kids, and then I actually, since I know how to play the game at the time really well, he actually sent me a message telling me that I cheated, and I'm like, well, I used more than one move, so that's why I beat you, and he just kind of was mad after that. I think he blocked me or something, if that was even possible on original Xbox Live. And if you want me to continue my succession here, as I was saying earlier, a year after you got Virtua Fighter 4, you got Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution, which of course was 2002. And then a whole 2 years later, 2004, finally Virtua Fighter 4 Final Tunes came out, only in Japan on Naomi 2 Gd-Rom. Which I still find it sad to this day that that game never came out on any home console.
Fight 2. Ready, go!
And of course, it goes without saying that both Virtua Fighter 4 and Evolution got their PlayStation 2 releases.
Excellent.
The Virtua Fighter 4 came out on PlayStation 2 in the beginning of 2002, because of course they more or less had to the problem was taking stuff from like Naomi to PlayStation 2 was a bit of a harder port than say like taking a game from Naomi to Dreamcast, and especially Naomi 2 with its enhanced graphics and more memory. It just was a bit of a struggle to get that done, so that's why it kind of took a while. August 2001 all the way to January of 2002. And the reason I chose Aoi here is because of course, she's one of the new characters, and
I'm gonna whip you in no time.
I actually play pretty good at her, as her. New characters in Virtua Fighter 4, of course. And one thing I have to say is kind of weird is, originally I had intended to do a Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution video, and the characters seemed like they were on like super steroids when I would face them, especially Jackie here. He would be like kind of easy at first, where I defeat him once, then he'd defeat me twice or something to that extent, but then he became like almost impossible. It's like the AI got mad that you were defeating the character at all, so it just kind of like redoubled its efforts, which didn't make really any sense to me. And now, in my opinion, if you wanted to give Virtua Fighter 4 like a true port on a game console of the time, the only console that really could have handled this without taking it down like they did for the PlayStation 2 version would have been the Xbox, of course, because it would have had the horsepower to actually push all the polygons and probably even run this in either 480 or 720p as well. And that's another thing that really annoys me about Jackie Bryant is he has, I know Dead or Alive 5 he has it, but he has a counter where when you hit him and he's doing nothing, he'll counter you. And I never really like, especially when it comes to like counters and stuff that you can't escape, when it's like something where it happens no matter what. And then of course here's the inevitable mirror match. When you have 13 matches and just about that many characters, it's kind of impossibility not to get yourself at least once.
Ring out.
Oh, and in case you didn't know, the AI right now is using her original costume, whereas I'm using her alternate costume. And the way that you get the alternate costumes in this game, you just highlight your character, hold the start button, and that will change the costume. Like you'll see the picture change, and then of course press any face button, punch, kick, or block / hold. I can remember at the time when this game was coming out, they were looking at it and they were really like praising the backgrounds and how great they looked. And now, if you don't know much about Shun-Di, the way that he works, the reason that there's that little flask by his name is there are several moves that Shun-Di will do where he will drink, and when he drinks, it actually does certain things to him. Like certain moves will become available. Like there's one move that I use all the time when I play Shun-Di is the pile driver. He'll do this thing where he spins and flies in the air, kind of like Ryu Hayabusa's Azuna drop, but instead of like grabbing you and spinning down, it's just kind of like a across the screen thing. I'm really not sure if he does it in this, but I think you need at least like 6 or 7 on the drink meter. And you see he just drank right now and he gained 4. But I've had him up to like 20 or 30, and there's like some powerful moves that he can do, and like some of his regular moves just become more powerful, which I really thought was kind of a cool added touch to add dimension to the character. I know in some English versions of Virtua Fighter, it either doesn't exist, like this doesn't happen, especially the part where his face will turn red when he drinks too much. And then there are some versions of the game where, like, the operator could turn it off as well, which I always thought was a cool feature. And that's another thing that I was kind of annoyed about with Dead or Alive 5 having Virtua Fighter characters. I thought that Shun-Di should have been in there, because it would have been awesome to have, like, a Shun-Di Brad Wong tag team. But, who knows, maybe if they do another crossover with Dead or Alive, that'd be kind of cool. And now here, of course, here is Wolf. He can be quite a powerful character if you're not careful. I lost a couple times during this gameplay, but I can honestly say it's not as much as I had lost in some matches that I played. And then, of course, here is the last stage before final stage. Final stage, of course, being the final stage. In this one, I'll spoil it, of course, is with Akira Yuki. And for some reason, Sarah Ryan's stage is always falling apart. I'm not sure if there's any story behind this or if there's any reason. If you want to see where I lost, I can tell you it was this match in particular. Let me see if I can remember any others. I think I lost at least once to Lao. And I lost a few times in the final match to Akira Yuki. I think that's the only matches that I had lost. But I just find it funny that this version has 13 matches, which is 12 matches in the final stage, whereas Evolution and Final Tuned only have 11, which is 10 matches in the final stage. I find it kind of weird how they took that out. Similar to how Initial D had that thing where they took out the 4th stage in Miyogi in the later versions of the game, but they had all 4 stages. Well, in version 3 they took out the last stage of Miyogi, but they left them all in for the first 2. And also, which I'm gonna have to show in a future video, there's a different Stage 1 story in Initial D Stage 1. So I'm gonna have to show you the Miyogi story in the original Initial D eventually. And of course here is Akira Yuki's alternate costume, which the actual intro you had seen here was the Virtua Fighter 4 version C intro, which is the new one. Whereas this is the one he's featured in the original Virtua Fighter 4 intro, which you will see at the very end of this video. It's a much more like structured video where it shows all the characters and their stats and everything. Because I think at the time Sega was just impressed on how great these characters will look. Which I can honestly tell you, I am still quite impressed on how great all the characters look in this game as compared to early entries in the series. But then again, a lot of times when it comes to Sega going from one game to the other, like even like Virtua Fighter 1 to Virtua Fighter 2, there's like quite a jump. Like, you know, your Virtua Fighter 1 was very blocky, and then your Virtua Fighter 2, the characters looked nice and smooth because it was rendered at medium resolution, and the characters looked really nice. And that's another thing I think is cool about this stage. You'll notice a couple things like that in some of these stages, that now it's lit up in the background, and it just gives that, like, nice lighting effect. And that's something that a lot of the stages in this game have, is some really nice lighting effects. And unlike some stages, you can actually bring out people, and some of these where you knock off the pieces of the wall. Reminds me a little bit of Fighting Vipers, how it's caged in, but then you can, like, break out of the cage. And now here is the final stage, and I will warn you, of course, I'm not going to win this, because as I said, I have beaten Doral once, because what had happened is I was playing as Sarah. I don't think the first time, like, Doral was getting me very close to the edge of the ring, and then she did some crazy combo move and ended up ringing out herself, and the second time I think I legitimately beat her. And that was the only time. If you look into the discussion on YouTube, you'll see the day I actually did it, I put some sort of comment about it. And I know I probably said this in the Final Tune video, but this stage that you face Doral, and it reminds me of the Danger Zone from Dead or Alive. It's like kind of a moving platform. It has this very industrial look. And now, of course, as I said, it goes without saying, Virtua Fighter 4 is just an excellent game, especially the arcade version. In fact, if you've never played Virtua Fighter 4 in either A, you're someone like me and you really want to have like your own arcade hardware, or B, you have an arcade by you with a Virtua Fighter 4 arcade cabinet, by all means, play this as the arcade version, or of course, if you have to, play it on an emulator, but this game just plays so well as the arcade version as opposed to the fairly watered-down PlayStation 2 version. It really is worth, I could go as far as say it really is worth spending all the money on a full Naomi 2, even Naomi 2 Gd-Rom if you want to get Final Tuned, which, as I mentioned before, you need 3.17 firmware on your DIM board, along with your Gd-Rom with that, but yeah, there's not really more that I can say about this game, except for I highly recommend the arcade version to anyone who either has only played the PlayStation 2 or has just never played Virtua Fighter 4. It's definitely worth it, and I highly recommend it. There's no more I could highly recommend this game. And this is another thing, this reminds me of Dead or Alive as well, where it's showing how I defeated everybody, or of course even like some of the Tekken games did the same thing where they show you how like you beat everybody. But this has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I shall see you later. And of course, enjoy that original Virtua Fighter 4 intro from the arcade here. Later.
Game over!